So we are going to continue talking about this concept of elasticity, since there are a total of 4 different elasticities that are part of your A-level syllabus. And so far we have looked at the details of PED and PES, the price elasticity of demand and supply. Now what I'm going to do is that I am going to start off by summarizing whatever we have been learning about PED and PES, and that summary should also allow you to see the sort of structure and the sort of conceptual framework within which we have been building understanding of both of these first 2 elasticities. And then we are going to continue using that structure that will come out through the summary to work out the details of income elasticity of demand. And finally, then in the next section, we'll look at the last elasticity, the cross elasticity of demand of the product using the same structure. Anyhow, let me just first of all start off with summarizing PED and PES. In fact, let me just go back to the very beginning of the discussion of this topic of elasticity. Where first of all, I told you that this concept of elasticity generally in economics is where you try to measure the responsiveness or amount of change in one variable when some other related variable changes. So you can just think of it generally as X elasticity of Y. That would be where economists are trying to measure the responsiveness or amount of change in Y when some other related X variable changes. And remember, we would always compare the percent change of X with the percent change of Y. Now with this general way of understanding, we worked out the PED, the price elasticity of demand, as a way of measuring the responsiveness or amount of change of the demand of the product when the price changes. And we said that we would compare the percentage of quantity demanded with the percent change of price, and we can divide the two, use this formula and calculate the price elasticity of demand of a product. And then we said that the sign of this PED will always be negative. That will reflect the law of demand, and value, we said, will tell us whether the demand is elastic or inelastic, whether it responds a lot or a little bit, the absolute value. And then we moved on to price elasticity of supply. We defined it as a way of measuring the elasticity or responsiveness or the amount of change in supply when the price of a product changes. So we ended up comparing the percentage change of quantity supplied with the percentage change of price, and we said we can calculate PES using this simple formula. So the only thing that changed from PED was that instead of PED we had PES, so we divided percent change of quantity supplied instead of dividing the percentage change of quantity demanded. Or you can just think of it like this, that you divide the thing that is changing, the quantity supplied in this case, with the thing that is causing the change, price in this case. Again, where we learned that the sign of this PES will always be positive, that will reflect the law of supply, and we also learned the value will tell us whether supply is elastic or responsive or not. And as far as the values are concerned, we said that this formula that can give you any value, but both in the case of PED as well as PES, we said the key values are those of equal to 1, greater than 1, and less than 1. And they tell us that when the absolute value is greater than 1, the demand or supply is elastic, otherwise it's inelastic or unitary elastic. Now we will use this exact same framework to work out what IED is, income elasticity of demand. So we are going to try and measure the responsiveness, the elasticity, the amount of change in demand when the incomes of the consumers of a product change. That is how you can define IED. And here we are going to compare the percentage change in demand with the percentage change in the income of the consumers. So the formula to measure or calculate IED of a product would be to divide the thing that is changing, the percentage change in demand, by the percentage change in income, the thing that is causing the change. Now here some of you would be wondering about this terminology of demand versus quantity demanded. Just remember that as far as this concept of IED is concerned, whenever you are learning it, whenever you are revising it or using it, you don't need to worry about whether you are saying demand or quantity demanded. We are going to use these two terms interchangeably learning this concept. So you don't need to worry about the terminology, and it will become clear why. So again, the sign and the value of IED, they hold important economic meaning. But as far as the value is concerned, it's not very important. You just need to remember that, it has very similar meaning to what it had here. If IED absolute value turns out to be greater than 1, it means the percent change of demand is larger, so you would consider the demand to be income elastic. It responds or changes a lot when incomes of the consumers change. And less than 1 would mean that the demand would be considered to be income inelastic. Demand does not change, it does not respond a lot when the incomes of the consumers change. And this is where things get interesting, because as far as this concept of IED is concerned, all the importance of this concept lies in the sign of the IED that you would get using this formula when you calculate it for any product. And what differentiates IED from the first two elasticities is that unlike PED and PES, where PED is always negative, PES is always positive, IED, the income elasticity of demand, it can be positive, it can be negative, and it can be zero. And all of these signs, they hold very important economic meaning, and the thing that you will be asked in your A-level exam repeatedly will revolve around that economic meaning of these different signs of IED. So what I'm going to do here is that let me just get rid of all of this over here, and let me just put the basic understanding of IED. Let me just write it down over here. So income elasticity of demand, we would define it as a way of measuring the responsiveness of demand, the amount of change in demand when the income of the consumers of a product change, and we will assume that everything other than incomes is constant. And as far as the formula of IED is concerned, let me write that down over here as well. So IED is equal to the percentage change in demand of the product divided by the percentage change in the incomes of the consumers of the product. Now value, as I told you, it's not very important, but remember, since we know the concepts, that greater than 1 would mean income elastic and less than 1 would mean income inelastic. There is one good use we can make of this knowledge, and I'll give you that by the end of this video. But first of all, let us start understanding what is the significance of the different signs of IED. And the way I'm going to do that is that